What's up, summoners? King Blair here. Today we're going to be doing the full Kayron guide. Thank you y'all for the 500 subscribers. It has finally happened. I am going to give you all my knowledge of Kayron so you can be a better Kayron player and build this guy because I love him. If you ever want to chat about him after this video, let me know down in the comments. But if you like the video, make sure to like, subscribe, and join the Discord link. Thank you so much for the 500 subs, y'all. And without further ado, let's jump to that intro.
Ashes to ashes, dust to dust. Obey, kneel. There is no salvation for those who fall in battle.
So a little bit of background before we start the full guide video for Kayron. We're going to talk a little bit of the background about him, how the video will roll out from here on forward so you can skip around, go to the parts that you care about, and just overall get a better idea of Kayron overall, just so you can start seeing all the different aspects of him. But let's first go with the background. He is the fastest unit in the game, has the fastest speed, which gives him so much versatility in the game. He's amazing for PvP, he has a solid PvE, and it's just a really good unit, especially for early game players. And while he has a more advanced build and he scales with you, he also has an easy build for you to use very early on in the game where you can get a lot out of your Kayron. And then just storyline wise, y'all know he's the villain, he's the edgy boy, he's the one that corrupted Vildred, he's the one that messes everything up, he's the one that basically killed Bask. So yeah, Kayron, kind of a big villain, but you know, you gotta love the bad guy sometimes. But yeah, now that we have the little bit short introduction about Kayron as the fastest unit and sometimes called the Fire RB because of how nasty he is if people don't have a counter to him, let's just start going full force through him.
Kayron's first skill is Void Slash, which is a single target attack skill that applies decreased heat chance and does damage based on his missing health. This skill can become an AoE, as we will see when paired with his skill 2. Skill 2 is Immortal Will, which gives him immortality when he takes lethal damage, resetting the cooldown of his ultimate and giving him the immortality, the buff. It also makes his Void Slash be an AoE attack whenever Kayron has a buff, which you can soul burn to do high AoE damage, as we see right here, because we have those buffs. The other thing of the skill 2, as we see here, he took lethal damage and it gives him the immortality buff. So from now on, no matter how many times he gets hit, he will stay alive and be able to keep doing damage and doing more damage based on his missing health, which is his biggest part of his kit. The next thing, even if you have the unable to be buffed debuff, you can still survive the first hit even though you won't get the mortality buff. As far as the dual attack with the first skill, it will always proc your skill 1 even if you have buffs or not, so remember you can't cheese with dual attack, you get the AoE. Skill 3 is going to be Kayron's Bread and Butter. It is a single target damage attack that does insane damage based on his missing health. As we see here, we have no health, so this skill will be doing a lot of damage. If it kills, it also is able to give you an extra buff duration, which extends his immortality by 1 turn, which allows him to take extra turns in the future. The other thing with this skill is that since it increases attack, it pairs really well with Alexa's Basket, which is why I mentioned it's one of his better artifacts, because when Alexa's Basket has proc, as we see there with the greater attack, since the ultimate gives him increased attack, he's able to extend his greater attack buff by 2 turns because of getting that increased attack.
The first build I will be talking to you guys about today is going to be the damage Kayron build. This is primarily the build run by majority of Kayron players who want to start getting Kayron, or who are just recently got Kayron and want to just try him out. And it's also my recommendation to you guys because it is the easiest build. For this build, there are 2 must-haves. You must have immunity, and you must have at least 95%, if not 100% crit rate, because you want to make sure you have immunity so you can't be locked down since you don't have the greatest speed, and you need the crit rate so you make sure you crit on your opponent in a critical moment with the ultimate to be able to kill, proc your passive, proc all the different things you need to have and have that consistency. The build I show you guys here, while not optimized, I showed it for a very good reason, because this is all equipment you guys can get and even make better than me, because it's all equipment you have access to. This ring was an event equipment that you can actually farm in the story. This necklace was just recently given out and it's not even plus 15. This chest is from the Hell Labyrinth, which you can get every single month. You have access to this chest, and it rolled primarily on HP. Ideally, you want it to go on crit rate to max out that crit rate and get some speed so you don't get lapped. The helmet, again, it was another event exclusive helmet, but you just got for playing the game. The only thing that I put my own was this sword, which doesn't have that much crit rate. It does up the crit damage, but you can switch up the equipment, and one good piece of equipment to get a similar build to this is really easy for you guys to do, which is why I highly recommend the damage Kayron build to you guys. So moving forward, when we talk about artifacts, exclusive equipment, and how to play your Kayron, I will be referring to those type of scenarios as damage Kayrons, so you can abuse the 3-turn capabilities that Kayron has. The next build that I will be talking to you guys about, my personal favorite, and the one I was able to get because of lucky rolls and because I love the character so much, the Speed Kayron build. For a Speed Kayron build, the primary goal is to abuse the high speed stat that he has as one of the fastest character, while not necessarily doing as much damage, being able to provide consistent DPS and take out squishy priority targets early on in the fight, and silence with the exclusive equipment, as we will talk about later. But biggest thing with this build, the must-haves for this build, is at least 240 speed. If you're using the Speed Kayron, that is a must-have. That is something you are trying to get to, because you need to be able to outspeed in your tier. If you're higher than Challenger, if you're trying to get to Champion, you will need this to be at least 250. You might wonder, you don't have 250, but that's because this is going to be a hybrid, which I'm showcasing throughout, and it's something that I made the personal decision to make a hybrid. Immunity for this Kayron is not necessary, but it is very nice to have. The reason I have the crit rate is because the other requirement is having that close to 100% possible, if not 100. You can supplement this with Alexa's Basket, which is going to be the best artifact with him for Speed Kayron, but we will talk about that further. When referring to later on clips throughout the video, when I say Speed Kayron, that's the build I'm referring to. It's the 240 plus speed Kayrons that can still do damage. This is not the recommended build. This is the niche build, and it's a build that the better equips you have, the more you shine. It is not early game friendly. If I show you guys the equipment, it's all reforged. It all has high substats, all very well optimized for the most part, with a few that are not fully optimized. But it has very strong stats that are not easy to get. So it is not a recommended build if you're trying to just try the character out. For artifacts, Kayron can essentially use almost a majority of the thief artifacts and use them to a very high degree and really abuse a lot of the power that they are able to provide. For damage Kayrons, just going through some primary, the main artifacts that are often used. For damage Kayrons, the main artifacts you will be using will be Lilius Knife. This artifact is the best for slow Kayron because it penetrates 20% of the enemy's defense, which is a lot when you're doing a skill 3 that does high damage. It's the most consistent, it's the easiest condition to meet, and it's always will happen as long as you get a little damage on an enemy target. It helps you get through barriers, and I've seen many Kayrons easily kill Lilius at 22 KHP Lilius with this artifact when they are at death's door with their passive. So again, super duper strong artifact that you guys can use for damage Kayron. Dust Devil is another really good artifact for damage Kayron, since you are using immunity, and that is a requirement for a damage Kayron is to have that immunity. This artifact allows you to proc your AoE attack twice in a row. It is insane when this triggers. It is not as consistent, and most of the fights you'll only get to proc this one time, as the typical combo for Kayron is S3 into S3 when they try to pop the passive into S1. So it's a little bit more inconsistent, but when the artifact procs, units are going to start dropping, which is why so many people like Dust Devil. Another one for damage Kayrons to try to trick the opponent and give more survivability is Moonlight Dreamblade. This artifact gives you attack buff, so it allows you to be able to use Kayron's damage a lot better. It gives you attack buff before you use your first S3, which makes it nice, especially because that way you can do even more damage on the first hit to squishy units if they don't have barriers. For the both speed and damage Kayrons, Alexa's Basket is a really good artifact. This is almost a must-have for speed Kayrons if you're trying to build a hybrid like I am, because the greater attack buff, it's one of the most broken things in Epic 7. When it procs, it lets you easily kill a target at the beginning of the fight. So this artifact is insane for speed Kayrons, and the fact that they're so fast, they're more likely to proc it and cycle it. And as we talked in the skill section, you're able to extend that greater attack buff by 2 turns early in the fight, and it just lets you AoE way more consistently and be a DPS unit. For slow Kayrons, I don't recommend it because most of the time you want to be able to have something that's more consistent. Consistency on damage Kayrons is the most important thing. So having this is not the greatest thing. You already only get 3 turns and you already get your own attack buff. So this is just almost overkill in some scenarios, and if it doesn't proc, it really could hurt you when you could just have an Lilius Knife that is way more consistent. The other notable artifact for speed Kayron and for damage Kayron is actually going to be one of the collab artifacts, which is going to be, if I can find it, it's going to be Portrait of the Savior. So this artifact is the highest damage artifact to kill squishies with. It is amazing for killing units that are squishy and at high health. For speed Kayrons, if you don't like to rely on Alexa's Basket, this artifact is a good choice to be able to kill the squishier units and use them against teams that are more built around cleaving. You can surprise the opponent with this and instantly kill off their unit and just do a bunch of damage from there on. For damage Kayrons, it lets you not have as much setup. You can just go in and kill a unit right away. But again, Lilius Knife is recommended for damage Kayron, and Alexa's Basket is recommended for speed Kayrons. For the exclusive equipment, this is probably one of the things that brought Kayron back on the map and has given him so much flexibility on the different builds that you can do with him. And it honestly fills up everything we talked about, the artifacts, the equipment. It comes in and rounds it all out. So the actual artifact gives you crit hit chance, which is super nice because Kayron needs to be as close as possible to 100, if not 100, to be effective. And this allows you to have that access to that and makes it a lot easier to build and focus more on the offensive stats. The first skill that you can get with Void Slash, it increases the damage by 10%. As we mentioned before with the artifact section, this primarily would be used on a damaged Kayron running Dust Devil, where you would give him this artifact, so that way if he procs Dust Devil, it does that much more damage. It's not as consistent because again, Dust Devil only has around a 30% chance of proccing, so it's something that you are relying on very heavily, and it's not the best thing to rely on in that AoE skill. But again, if you want to spice things up, it's something that's super fun to use, and being able to proc Dust Devil with this skill, you'll be doing so much more damage. The second one, Apocalypse. This is probably the only one that is used for both the speed and the damage. Kayron is going to be Apocalypse first, the second one, which is damage stealth increases by 10%. The reason why this is so popular is because it lets your Kayron one-shot a lot easier. I personally run it on my speed Kayron because it lets you take out a unit at the beginning of the fight and just win the fight from there because you were able to take out that unit right at the beginning of the fight. But if you're building a super fast Kayron and really abusing that speed to try to counter Bazaar, the third Apocalypse is the better option for speed Kayron, which it allows to inflict silence. This is best against Bazaars, and it's good against cleave teams to be able to disrupt, especially Athleticas. This does have the chance to miss because it relies on effectiveness, which is why I don't like it as much, but it's still the premier use for speed Kayrons. You should not be using this for damage Kayron because damage Kayron is there to one-shot and kill, not to have some form of crowd control or CC. But that is that for the exclusive equipment. Now for Kayron's matchup chart. So these are units that you typically either don't want to take Kayron against at all and you want to try to avoid as much as possible, and also units that generally you can beat and you have a good matchup. Again, these are not all the units, as you guys see all the units down there. These are just some noticeable matchups that you will see a lot, that you often will get a chance to try out. I've got several fights with these, but let's just go over each of them. So hard counter, they are in general order. Seaside Bellona, by far biggest counter. Permaban for me as a Kayron player. I'm gonna give you guys a tip right now. If you know you are going to use Kayron in RTA, you're either first picking Seaside Bellona or you're banning her. Because if you let Seaside Bellona through, you just lost the fight. Your Kayron is absolutely useless. He will do negative work for you. Why? Seaside Bellona cannot be buffed. Every time Kayron attacks AoE, Seaside Bellona gets 4 stacks and he's just able to counterattack and do just as much, if not more damage because of Ring or Specialty Drink, while you're unable to kill her. By far, worst matchup. I see so many people not banning Seaside Bellona whenever they're going to RTA and they first pick Kayron and they don't ban Seaside and then they lose and they wonder why they lost. And it's because Seaside is the hardest. If I had to put this isn't like avoid at all cost tier, but I didn't want to make an extra tier just for Seaside. But she is his biggest counter in the game. It's just absolutely destroys him. Dizzy with Lela Valin, really bad for him. Also the debuffs. Lela Valin lets her take off the debuffs, and if you're using a speed Kayron, you can't really kill her. A lot of Dizzies on counterattack set, they're able to stun, they're able to put debuffs that you can't do much about. And it's just not a good day whenever Dizzy's there, because as Kayron does AoE, he can hit her, she can counterattack, strip his buffs, stun, and then you don't get that extra pivotal turn with the S3, as we will see in the gameplay video, which is one of the biggest strengths Kayron has. Elena, on the other hand, she heals whenever Kayron does an AoE attack. She lowers his AoE damage. Big hurt. Also for damage Kayrons, if you have no way to strip her and they have an Elena going after the team, they are able to set up invincibility and effectiveness up and it's something you can't get around, y'all. If she sets that up and you have a slow Kayron, it's GG. Fast Kayron is not as bad, which is why she's a little bit lower, because you still get to use your ultimate on a priority target. You can still work a little bit around Elena. I will still take my Kayron against certain Elena teams in Arena because I have a speed Kayron, but for slow Kayrons, it's not a good matchup for you. Unfavorable, these are matchups they won't absolutely block out your Kayron completely, but there's units you don't want to see your opponent be picking up. Deanne is able to lower his crit rate, really hurts his damage. Barriers all the time, makes it to lower his damage. Kral, one of his natural enemies, but the only thing why he's not in hard counter is because in regular arena and in Guild Wars, your Kayron can actually tank the Kral for your team. So you can put the Kayron there to tank Kral's S3 if you're using an aggressive team comp. You're able to still do your damage, but Kral will target your Kayron because Kayron's fire. That way your team gets an extra turn. Your Kayron won't die because of immortality. So Kral, not a best matchup for RTA, but it's okay for Arena. That's why he's unfavorable. Fallen CC, the biggest thing that destroys him every single time, it's not the barriers, it's the skill nullifier. Kayron can get around it, which is nice, which is why it's not absolute counter, because sometimes you do want that extra AoE damage to get rid of the skill nullifiers. But Fallen Cecilia, barriers, skill nullifier, and then the provoke. If she provokes you, if you drop immunity or they strip immunity and she provokes you, you lose access to using your S3 and extending that extra turn. It is so pivotal to get that S3, y'all. When we talk about gameplay and how you should be using Kayron later on in the video, you really have to watch out for Fallen Cecilia. Rule of Light is just annoying because the units you take out, she's able to revive them. Crimson Armament, similar to Elena, but not the water typing and doesn't lower the AoE. Faithless Lidica will strip your Kayron immunity if it's a slow Kayron, and then set up skill nullifier for her team. So that way your Kayron can't do his job properly and she's able to stun him. Cerise is able to remove Kayron's immunity. Again, anyone who can remove his immunity or slow him down or lock him down with the stun, she's able to slow him down and then be able to lap him and stun him with S2. Out of all the cleave units, definitely watch out for these two because usually you do want to take him against cleaves, but you don't want to take him against F Lidica or Cerise cleaves. Assassin Cartuja, while annoying, the 15% chance is annoying and it can lose you the fight. Most of the times, good Kayrons are able to one-shot Assassin Cartuja, and AoE skills won't always miss on everyone, but there are those cases where they can miss and Spectre Tenebria or whoever can beat you. Judge Kise, one of the units you kind of do have to watch out for, and it becomes a 50-50 if you're using a slow Kayron, because if they are using their S2, you have a 50 chance that they'll be able to proc his passive and then strip it, but they can also strip the immunity. So it gives you a 50-50 that potentially you'll be able to survive that. Also, if you're running a speed Kayron, if you outspeed, you win, you're able to kill her, silence her, take her out the fight. Ammo Ken, it's really just a stat check. If you have a Kayron that has a really high damage or is able to kill when he's at low health. So if you can able to kill through it, you win. If you can't, if he has defense buff, then you lose. So it literally just comes down to a stat check, which is why it's even. Lilius, again, it's annoying that she's there. She can provoke him for 2 turns. She can dual attack with priority units, push you back, but overall, you're still able to get around her. She's not doing too much to you. You're still able to do damage to her units. In the favorable section, these are units you actually do really good against. Arbiter Vildred, because you have immunity, you're able to take him out on your first turn. He can proc his passive, come back, he ulties, and then you proc your passive. You give that extra turn and you kill him again and extend your immortality for 1 turn. It's really, really nice. Kayron's really good, especially slow Kayrons against Arbiter Vildred. If you're able to get that turn and push him down and keep the immunity, you're just able to maintain your buffs much longer and just beat Arbiter Vildred. Basar, for the most part, he can put the unable to be buffed, but one small support to your Kayron to remove that debuff is GG. It does hurt you if he hits, but again, it's fire versus earth, so you do have that advantage of him potentially missing. Maid Chloe, you just do so much AoE and single target damage that her heals and her revival won't be able to keep up. She doesn't protect like Rule of Light, where Rule of Light gives invincibility. Maid Chloe doesn't do that. Spectre T, overall, if you have a damaged Kayron, one auto attack and she's dead. So if they can't protect her properly, you're able to get to her pretty easily. Alencia, even though she can strip your buffs with the ultimate and she's decently tanky, she can't kill you as easily. She has the chance to miss on you while you're doing mad damage to her and her team. Cjbeards, super squishy. You're able to beat him up. Apocalypse Robbie, you get 2 chances to kill her, 2 to 3, depending how it goes, especially when you're low health. And while she has a lot of health, she doesn't have that much defense, so if you're able to cleave through her. And then for characters you do want to take them in, Oxlots. Typically, if you see an Oxlot, you know they're going for a cleave. If you can prepare for it, put your Kayron, put your anti-cleave offense, it's GG. They can't do much. Most people will usually ban your Kayron at that point. Charles, he doesn't have the same defensive stats as Alencia, so you're often able to one-shot him and he doesn't even see the light of day. Charleses are slow, so they won't be able to outlap your Kayron, even if it's a damaged Kayron. So overall, I love taking Kayron against Charles because it's just a clap. Y'all saw in that clip, always kill those Charles, easy peasy, just boom. And that was a speed Kayron. Imagine if you had a damaged Kayron. Challenge Nami, again, she doesn't debuff, and she can't kill Kayron in one turn. He just comes back and clapper, low defensive stats. Bildred, again, can't kill, will die in his chalk. Violet, while he has 15% chance to miss, he won't be able to one-shot your Kayron, and the amount of damage you're going to be outputting is way more than he's going to be able to make up for the rest of his team. So typically it is going to be a free win. Some overall points from this section. Again, avoid Seaside, beat up Earth units, and counter cleaves. And that's it for this, for the matchup chart. Next up, the units that Kayron pairs up well with. So this is for both speed Kayron and for damage Kayron, which I showed the builds before. The biggest thing for Kayron is you have 2 options on people you want to do. So as you see there, Arbiter Village is there. Why? Kayron is a premier unit for anti-cleave against all the Athletica, especially against Bazaar and Oxlots. A lot of people like to put Kayron to counter those teams, and Arbiter Vildred just helps you do that much better. Pairing him with Arbiter Vildred, you get an amazing going second team. You're able to survive with both of them, and both of them come back and do nutty AoE damage, insane single target DPS, and are able to just completely obliterate the opponent. Elena, it's more on the defensive side. This is for slow Kayrons, primarily for damage Kayrons, not for speed Kayrons. But for damage Kayrons, one of the biggest things is Elena, Crimson Armin. They kind of go together, Crimson Armin, Elena, Assassin Cartuja, but Crimson Armin and Elena, definitely 2 big units to pair with them. The big reasons why is because they're able to provide buffs for Kayron. So immunity is really important, so you don't get locked down by a dizzy, or you don't get debuffed, you don't get stunned, and also the invincibility guarantees you an extra turn. And what's really unique, as we saw with the skill 3, if you kill, you extend your buffs. So with Crimson Armin and with Elena, you're able to extend invincibility by an extra turn, y'all. Think about that. You come in with Kayron, you use your ultimate, you pop a unit, boom, you get another turn of invincibility. That's a full AoE attack, then you still have immunity, and it's just, you're guaranteed 4 turns unless they have a way to strip buffs. You have 4 turns where your Kayron is just doing mad damage guaranteed. Assassin Cartuja is nice because Moonlight Dreamblade, as we mentioned, part of the artifacts that are good on Kayron, can mess up the opponent trying to debuff you, the opponent trying to kill your Kayron or proc your Kayron's passive. And just any time that you can give more turns to your Kayron, the better. That's the same reason why FCC's there. The skill nullifier makes it so that's another turn. Particularly good, Assassin Cartuja and Final CC for defenses when paired with Kayron. That's why they're more there, because they are able to give the barrier, give the skill nullifier, provide more survivability for your Kayron in defense, and make it so you can take more turns. They definitely pair better with the faster Kayrons, because lower Kayrons, they still have the same problem, but it's still nice to have the extra barrier so they don't proc your passive as quickly, but it's a lot harder when they get their full turn. Ambitious Tywin, biggest thing against Bazaar, it just makes it so Bazaar just gets absolutely cut, because when you have Ambitious Tywin in there, and Bazaar goes, even if they get lucky and get the cannot be buffed, Ambitious Tywin is able to remove that. Yes, it's a little bit more niche, but you know, He's getting big buff soon, so he'll definitely be a lot better with him. Deannie providing attack buff, that paired up with Alexis Basket, you'll get the greater attack. It's nasty, barrier, survive longer, able to remove debuffs, it's just amazing. Lilius, again, she's more for the defensive side and for the speedier Kayrons, because Lilius typically has a faster base speed, and being able to ulti allows you to clear your debuffs and then be able to taunt the people that you don't want to fight against. So really good for damage Kayrons and for speed Kayrons if you have a really fast Lilius. So when he comes back around after your Kayron takes first turn, if they try to debuff him, you're able to remove those debuffs with Lilius, like if they go with their Dizzy. And that's just really solid for that. And also Bazaar, it adds an extra layer against Bazaar cleaves and against Bazaar defenses, where you can put the Lilius there with him. Additionally, they have a PvE synergy with Golem because they're able to attack together. And yes, while he doesn't get his AoE slash attack and dual attacks, it's still really nice to have your high damage Kayron proccing with your Lilius. The last two are kind of a spice picks that I personally really like and I think are very unique. Shooting Star Arcades is nuts with Kayron. Why? She gives immortality and immunity for 3 turns. If you pop a unit, that's 4 turns guaranteed. And if they get you low, like if they get your Kayron's health to a low percentage, you're able to come back and do damage based on your missing health. Because you have that immortality, they can't kill your Kayron. You're just there proccing your AoE 4 times. This with Dust Devil is just, woo, it's nasty, y'all. 4 turns of immunity, AoE, auto attacks every time, doing 10k. You proc Dust Devil, that's 16k on every single turn. And if they don't have a way to strip your buffs, there is nothing they can do about it. The last one is my personal favorite. I really like pairing my Assassin Collie with my Kayron because I run a speed Kayron, as I mentioned to you guys. And Assassin Collie plus Kayron equals any dead unit in Guild Wars. So I can guarantee a priority target unit will die. And I can also, if things go right and I get the greater attack with Kayron and I'm able to soul burn Assassin Collie, that's 2 units gone. And they have amazing sustained fight capabilities with Kayron's immortality passive. So I really like them paired up together. These are just some of the recommendations I have, that if you have these units, you can definitely supplement your Kayron and take him up to the next level. They really just pair up really freaking well with them, whether it's defense, arena, Guild Wars, or all different contents. They're just really, really solid units.
One of the main places where you're going to be using Kayron for PvE is going to be Golem. Since he is a fire unit, he does get that elemental advantage. As we see here, he's also a very good DPS. We're able to cleanse the debuffs with Tamarine, and we're going to give him the attack buff, and he's going to be doing good damage on the Golem because he is a fire unit. He has that extra 30% damage on Golem because of the way the hunt works, and we see that we're able to take on a lot of damage. In this scenario, both damage and speed Kayrons are really good because they are very consistent DPS units. The other place where you're going to be using Kayron is going to be for farming. For this one, damage Kayron does have an advantage over speed Kayron because damage Kayrons are going to be doing more AoE damage, and they also have that immunity buff, so they are guaranteed to have their AoE attack every single wave since the immunity buff will come back. Speed Kayron can still work with Lex's Basket, but it loses the consistency of AoE attack all the time. Who's able to attack. RTA being one of the most popular locations, Kayron is a really good counter pick against teams that have Spectre Tenebrias, as we mentioned with the matchup chart, and against cleave teams. As we see here, the second I see a Spectre Tenebria in the Ox slots, I know they're going for a cleave, so I know I need to get my Kayron and start preparing to counteract this cleave. One of the important things is whenever you have Kayron, you need to expect them to pick a counter or someone who is going to counter your unit. We see him here thinking about it, but then he remembers Kayron can mess up his fight, so he will be picking Dizzy to counter the Kayron. What I should have done instead of picking the Assassin Collie is to pick the Dizzy myself so that he's unable to choose Dizzy for himself and essentially have a counter against my Kayron and potentially beat me now because he has the Dizzy who is able to stun down and remove Kayron's buffs. Kayron can also be really good pick against Alencia. As we see here, I took Lilius and Kayron to counter the Alencia, and the potential units in the future. I also knew I was going to be using Kayron, which is why I banned the Seaside, which is always a good choice if you're planning to use Kayron because Seaside is his biggest matchup. One mistake that my opponent did here, as we will see later, he did a very good job by picking Yanni, which is a very strong matchup against Kayron and Lilius, but the next unit he picks is going to be Charles, and it's not something you want to do when you see a Kayron because you run the risk of him just one-shotting you. Here, we're fighting against Snow, who is a top 20 legend player at a fight I was able to win, where we put into practice everything we talked about with Kayron, with high DPS, being able to survive for long, and being able to counter Charles, which is one of the biggest reasons why I was able to win this fight, and banning Seaside when first picked. The next thing here, as we see here, he picked the Charles, which was a mistake when he saw the Kayron. I don't think he should have gone for that. Maybe he was trying to pray for a counterattack, but we do get the greater attack with our speed Kayron, and we are able to take his Charles out at a very early point in the fight, which is super helpful because now it becomes a 3v4. So even though he has better gear than me, he starts the game at a disadvantage. And we'll see later on how this fight will play out with the top 20 legend player. In this next clip that we're going to be seeing, we're going to see how, even though things look dire, we're going to see with Kayron how he's able to survive a little bit longer just because of having that type advantage against Valencia. Even though he gets the double proc, he misses both times due to the fire, which forces him to have to attack with FCC. One important thing with FCC though is that we get a lucky resist, which allows us to win the fight, and is the only reason we won the fight was our resist here. But it is very helpful to get that, and it's one of the units why CC beats Kayron, but we resisted. And ultimately, by beating the Charles and banning Seaside, we were able to win against him, even though he has better gear than us. Next up for Arena, we see the ideal speed Kayron scenario. We open with greater attack buff, and we're able to take out a priority target unit, and we'll see the full combo as we move through this clip. But the first nicest thing, we extend that greater attack buff, and we kill the Arbiter Vildred, setting us up for success. Later on, as we see, he is able to get my count to 1 health, popping the Immortality, resetting my ultimate. We used the ultimate again to pop his Ken with high damage because it's based on missing health. And now we are able to get more buffs from the haste, and with the AoE attack, since we got so many buffs, we soul burn and we're able to wipe out the rest of the team, showing the ideal combo for a speed Kayron in an ideal scenario. Next up, for non-ideal scenario, we don't always get the greater attack buff, but it lets us do enough poke damage early on. I could have had the silence here, which would have been nice, but it didn't really matter as much. We still take out the Arbiter Vildred, we resisted the Bazaar since we have the Lilius and the Kayron, and then we're able to come back, take off the skill nullifiers from FCC, and set us up for success. The Lilius pairs really well with the Kayron because she's able to remove the debuffs if he had gotten unable to be buffed. And now we're able to come back, and the Kayron still be able to do high DPS because he's able to move so fast. Next up, we see a damaged Kayron on the enemy side. I made the mistake of not trying to go for his passive, so he's able to set up skill nullifier and invincibility. In this scenario, if you were the opposing team, you already won the fight because now you have the invincibility, you have everything. The thing that with the AI, he is going to go with my Kayron with his ultimate, which, you know, if you're playing the damage Kayron, which in this case, my opponent's actually the one, like the AI is the one playing him, and he decides to go for my Kayron, but if he had gone for the Lilius, he could have definitely killed her. We see he has Elias Knife, which is the recommended artifact, and he would have extended his invincibility for an extra turn, and a damaged Kayron with invincibility for 2 turns, that's 4 turns we have to find a way to deal with him. We come back though, we try to pop the passive, you know, we're trying to make sure that we stop giving him that many turns, to stop it from being 4 turns to just being 3 turns now, but he is going to get that third attack. This is one of the best teams you can use with a damaged Kayron. You have the Valencia giving him the invincibility that he can extend with his ultimate, you have the effect resistance so he doesn't get locked down by CCs, and you have the Fallen Cecilia to give him the skill nullifier, and it's just so good. And the Valencia also removes the debuff, so even if they do bring a Dizzy, you see there he takes off the glancing hit, kills my Kayron, and now he's set up for winning because his skill 3 was reset. I don't know if you guys remember that, but since we got him low, he was able to reset that, and as we'll see here, with Elias Knight, he has that attack buff. We see a damaged Kayron at his full potential, just wiping people out if they don't take care of him. And massive damage, great damage. Next up, Against Basar, he actually has why I mentioned in the part where it's a pretty good matchup and why he pairs up so well with Lilius. As we see here, Basar is going to ultimate, but because we have the fire debuff, he misses on the Lilius, which is one of the reasons why Lilius is so good. He could have missed on the Lilius and Kayron like we saw in the earlier clip, but he misses on them both, and Lilius is able to take the debuffs out, which helps him be able to get his mortality up, which is very important when you're fighting in Arena. Next up, for Craw manipulation, whenever you have a Craw and you see a Craw, I mentioned it's not the best, but in regular Arena, it's better than RTA, because in regular Arena, you can actually use Kayron to tank the Craw, which is a very good strategy. Then for Guild Wars, it's the same things that I mentioned for Arena, all the same cases he's good at one-shotting, and here we see he's amazing at taking Charles, who's a very popular Guild Wars unit, so definitely use him there.
That is all I have for you guys today. Thank you so much again for the 500 subscribers. Let me know down in the comments if you like this video, if you want to see more videos of this format, and just overall, if you ever have questions on Kayron, he's my favorite unit. I've been using him non-stop for 2 months now, and I feel like I am a pretty avid Kayron player, so feel free to ask me any questions if something didn't make sense, if you want me to make a certain decision for you, or show you anything for my Kayron, please let me know in the comments. But that is all I have for you guys today. I will see y'all next time. Peace.